This is the Welcome to Humanity podcast with thought leader and transformative psychiatrist, Dr. Fred Moss. This show focuses on the betterment of humanity on a global scale. Each episode will leave you enlightened, inspired, and ready to make an impact in your world. Welcome to the show. Welcome to your life. Welcome to humanity. Here's Dr. Fred.
It's a deep pleasure and honor always to introduce new guests, people that I either don't know or don't know very well, or people who, other people have introduced me to and just say, oh, you got to have this person on your podcast. And, it's that's what today's episode is about. It's about a man who I don't know very much about. I know because we share, my wife is a longtime friend of Alex Iglesia, and maybe we're going to learn a little bit about that and what the connection is. But more than anything, we're going to learn a little bit about what makes this wonderful man tick. And we're going to do so with fun and ease and grace. And it's an honor to have had you agree to come on the podcast. It's a deep pleasure to have you here with me and to sharing a conversation. And I look forward to learning a little bit more about, who is this Alex Iglesia that Alexandra, my wife, continues to talk about. So welcome to the show, Alex. It's just a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks so much, Dr. Fred. I am bursting with delight.
It's really great to have you. So Alex Iglesia has left a bio for us, and I'm going to skim through it here. Alex, correct me if I say anything that's not true, but since you wrote it, it's probably pretty close to true. Alex guides beautiful beings who are here to create something good, speak truth, lead, teach, and transform as they walk their own path and trust their epic life no matter what anyone else is doing. Alex has been a high achiever, and he's experienced lots of things in his life, including multiple breakdowns in nearly every aspect of his life, and then eventual realignment and authenticity that arose from that. His body, his marriage, his finances, his soul and spirit have all been affected. And this is all well before his midlife crisis, as he notes. Alex has a history as a NASA engineer and then a Ninja-Yogi turned Body-Mind Alchemist. He has a master's degree in conscious evolution, and he lives deeply for the adventure of being. Alex will tell us a little bit more about himself that, one thing he reported in his bio is that he discovered that it doesn't always matter what you do or what you know until you're willing to allow yourself the joy and love you are here to share. And that's what we'll be doing today. We'll be sharing. Each and every one of us is really dealing with something, right? No matter whether we're tackling some of the big problems in the world or maybe even the tiny ones, we all face challenges. Now, I've been a psychiatrist for many years, and I've worked with all kinds of people from all walks of life. I've worked with more people than I can really count, from various backgrounds, dealing with more issues than you can imagine, of all sizes and shapes. So naturally, over time, I've developed a number of ways to assist others in gaining a new sense of freedom and empowerment. Now, I'm pulling back the curtain on one of those methodologies, and I'm going public, revealing the process and associated mindset that contributed to using this particular method with maximum effectiveness. It's all laid out in my new book called Creative 8, Healing Through Creativity and Self-Expression. You can pick this book up on Amazon.com in either Kindle or paperback format. And as a listener to the Welcome to Humanity podcast, I'd like to offer you a completely free copy in audiobook format. Just go to welcometohumanity.net/creative and download your free audiobook copy of Creative 8 today. I really look forward to hearing about your Creative 8 breakthrough. Now, let's get back to this amazing conversation. Welcome to humanity. Alex, I sometimes start off the podcast with what appears to be a really simple question, but it opens up for us all sorts of avenues to consider going down. And so from your vantage point today, right here, right now, who are you? Who is Alex Iglesia?
From my vantage point right now, Dr. Fred, I smile and say, I'm a finite supply to an infinite demand.
A finite supply to an infinite
demand.
Interesting. That's great and really catchy and really interesting and compelling. So it begs the question to speak to the next level, the next derivation of that.
I love the who am I question, and I hate the who am I question. It's so slippery. I remember actually pretty early on, pretty young, getting obsessed with both The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, the poem, and this movie called Angel Heart. And I wrote an essay. I wrote a thesis about the two of them together.
Wow. Angel Heart, the movie. Dude, you are striking me where it hurts. Man, I haven't spoken of that movie for 30 years, and that was my favorite movie the day I saw it. That was just amazing. Thank you for bringing that up. Amazing.
You're so welcome. It struck me, and I don't even know how I got a hold of those two things. But for me, at this point, 30 some years later, what's carried over is, it's basically Faust. He made this deal with the devil. And in The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, he does what he thinks is kind of right, but he's got some mixed intentions, and it, kills the whole crew. And there's all these consequences. And this sense of mistake, like having the right intention, or thinking you have the right intention, thinking I have the right intention, and yet it kind of being this weird, glitchy, cosmic mistake has been one of the through lines for me. And this concept of like being you has been something that I've wrestled with a lot, learned a lot about, tried on, done healing around, and authenticity has been a big thing. And one of the ideas that's out there a lot is this sense of, you have to be you have to be true to you. It's like, well, wait a minute, how do I do that? And that's where it starts for me. It's always been very slippery. Well, I've been studying a lot about Bitcoin for a client. I have a client who is an investor for the ultra high net worth, and he's hired me to do some really interesting research to get a different point of view about Bitcoin and the future of this. Well, one of the things I've learned is how Bitcoin, and for anyone who's not aware of it, just the basic idea is it's digital money. And there's two pieces to this. And I'll come back to why this infinite demand and finite supply is so interesting to me. Because on one hand, we've got, well, you're an infinite being. Okay, that's interesting. Well, I've seen a lot of people, myself included, not go anywhere with that idea, except for maybe some spiritual bypass. And at the same time, it's kind of partly true. It's like, well, how do I do this being you thing? What is this infinite being thing and infinite possibilities thing that can actually still let me be successful, or at least practical in the world? And so coming back to Bitcoin, I'm watching what's happening right now. And Bitcoin is this store of value and this digital currency. And the idea is that it's better money than money. It's better gold than gold. And the key idea here is this. And I was thinking, like, how do I explain this even to myself? Well, let's say somebody gave each of us a plant. And this plant was a really rare plant. It's like the only two that existed. Well, that means it's really rare, and someone out there would pay a lot of money for it for whatever reason. So let's just make up a number and say that they're each worth $10 million. And we say, okay, Alex and Fred, we're gonna save this because in 10 years it's gonna be worth even more. So let's save this. Let's put this in a vault, or let's plant this in the ground. Well, how likely is it that plant might die? So it's not a very good store of value. We come back 10 years later, there's nobody wants this anymore. On the other hand, you had gold or dollar bills, and that stores value over time. Well, Bitcoin stores value over time because it doesn't erode. It doesn't go away. The other part of Bitcoin is I realized the network effect by more and more people understanding the narrative of it, and more people seeing the problems it solves in the monetary system or for their own saving value. The more people then invest in it. So you've got more and more people investing in this particular container. And there is a finite supply of Bitcoin, which is part of what makes it valuable. And there's an infinite demand. Well, it struck me that if I'm going to be real about my life, and have the both and of being an infinite being and a spiritual being in a body, and I'm going to die and it might be tomorrow, what am I doing with my time? What am I doing with my life? I have a finite time, whatever metaphysics I have in terms of this life. I have a finite supply of my energy. I have to go to sleep at some point. I have to eat tomorrow or today. So this grounded, loving sense for me of I have an infinite supply of Alex, whatever that means, but there's an infinite demand. I could go do this. I could do that. I could create this offer. I can draw. There's an infinite demand and there's infinite possibilities above demand. So I've been playing with this both and of finite supply and infinite demand because I'm always interested in how do I say this, the joke of my wound brings me into the world. This has been part of my path. And every little bit of digestion, of healing that I get to earn for myself or I support someone with, we both come into the world with more of our contribution, with more energy and courage and whatever the other qualities are that we were wanting to express. And there's this both and the we of I'm here making a contribution, and maybe that contribution is I go to sleep on time, and maybe that contribution is I'm on a podcast. So that's where I'm trying to find for me myself a balance between the mystery and something really grounded and sweet.
Thank you. So, Alex, one of the things I'm hearing, I've dabbled in Bitcoin here for a couple months. I'm actually looking at the title of the dummies book that I have in, cryptocurrency investing. And I know that I know the value of Bitcoin today. I already have looked, I know about Elon a couple of days ago. And so I'm paying attention as I can. I'm sure I'm quite a novice compared to, I haven't poured any real maximum research into it for someone else, which would really drive me to learn a lot about it, which I totally get where you're at. And I also see how, this idea of, what makes this thing so interesting, amongst other things, is that it has value over time and that it increases value when people invest in it, like because of the 21 billion, there's something about I don't quite understand the economics quite actually, Alex, but maybe you can help us. And there's something like once Bitcoin is known and then becomes more known, being more known and then being investable and then being invested in actually increases its value and it lasts over time. And it sure looks like an interesting alternative to our present currency system, which appears to be headed south, the old one, this thing about dollars or maybe even this thing about precious metals. So how does Alex Iglesias, as we invest in Alex, what happens to your value? Does your value go up when I, or some Elon Musk clone actually invests in you?
I think so, absolutely. What comes to mind is that the cliche of what you appreciate appreciates.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say some interesting Elon Musk character says, all right, Alex, I want to bring you into my team. I want you to, whatever you do, just bring your whole self and come do your thing. And he invests X amount of money, time, resources. Well, I get to be nourished by those. There's a certain creativity that emerges, let's call it out of the unknown. For example, and I started noticing this a number of years ago, for today's example, your podcast is Welcome to Humanity. There's a container, there's an invitation, there's an essence. I can't help but receive that contribution. And so in the days and the hours, and sort of it compresses almost like a Doppler effect as I got closer and closer to the time, not a nervousness, but an arising, an emerging of what needs to be said, felt, known. And so I was, in a certain sense, flooded with investment of ideas and stories and new insights. And it's like, I wonder which one of these needs to be said. We'll find out. And I started noticing this many years ago when I remembered one particular one. I, out of the blue, just started feeling like I have to run a men's program. And I started sketching out what that would look like in a group program and what it would do and hero's journey. And the energy of that sort of expanded for a while and then went away. And it's like, what happened? Like the sense of something to do went away. Well, it wasn't very long until someone came out of the blue and said, Alex, I need to hire you. I got this going on with my relationship and this with my business. And oh, by the way, I really want to help men. And something in me just lit up and goosebumps. And it's like, oh my God, all that stuff that I was experiencing and going through was so that I could be ready to serve and support you.
Mm-hmm.
And I've experienced that many times,
Sure.
Whether I set the intention or I'm invited in the case of this podcast. And so to circle back to that question, I think there's these interesting ways that we invest our time, our money, our interest, our curiosity. And every time we invest, consciously or not, there's always some sort of return. And I think if we start to make that more conscious and we look at the community we're investing in, or the community of myself and the parts and my cells and my organs and my hopes and my dreams, if we keep looking at what is this network that we're investing in what way and why, and there can't help but be a value, although there could be a leak of value and a dissipation and an erosion of it. But that's the game. How do we channel this energy? And as I've been playing with that metaphor, I have found myself getting more and more focused. And I have found when it comes to clients that we're able to dance between the mindset, the coaching, the healing, and the practical words that they need to put on their marketing that feels like them and attracts the right people, for example.
Very interesting. So it's almost like as soon as you go offline of your intentions, you can be fairly certain that what you got while you were planning whatever it was that you were planning as an outcome will, or oftentimes, way more often than random mathematics would support, oftentimes be completely applicable to the next event that you're taking on or the next project or challenge that you're taking on. Like that's why you did what you did that then went in a different direction for where it was originally intended, was so that it could be applied to the new project that you didn't even know was to emerge. Is this accurate so far?
I love it. That's a great way to say it. In the bio, I've got the, turned Body-Mind Alchemist. Well, I went to Cornell for engineering. There were two things. I thought I wanted to do materials science because I thought I wanted to design snowboard materials and also design the ceramics that protect the spaceship from re-entry. I thought that is so cool that you can have a ceramic that doesn't conduct heat and you can touch it, but it's super hot. Well, all this material science stuff, and then the reality of it, the form of it, I was like, I don't belong in a lab. There's a part of me that can do this math, and there's a part of me that just like shoot me. And it was this weird thing. And it wasn't until way, many years later that I started to see this weird glitch of intention where it's like the form and the essence don't always match up. And sometimes we pursue the form, but it's really the essence. And I mean, Fred, I'm very much an alchemist at heart. Not necessarily training. I've got plenty of embodied training and whatnot, but it's like I radiate love of the concept, the promise of alchemy, transformation. And it's like, well, wow, material science is alchemy. And there's all these metaphors that I still draw on, but I don't do the math anymore. And I find that to be the case in so many ways. I find that for the people that have come to me for coaching or teamwork or anything, there's often that like tiny little glitch where it's like there's this essence of them, but they have a sort of mistaken idea about it. And then when they go, oh, right, I am a protector, like things start to happen differently. So they sort of get right with the essence, and then the formed, stuff falls apart, things break down, but it's sort of in service of the next alignment.
For our listeners, and frankly for me as well, the word alchemy it's kind of a sexy word. It's kind of a word. It's an out there word. As Alexandra would say, it's like an eco hipster word. It's a word that, has some sort of value, sort of maybe some intellectual implications or, like active, mysterious implications. For our listeners, and then for me, can you give us a brief definition or understanding when you say I'm an alchemist at heart? What is that? What does that even mean?
Well, a common idea of it is turn lead into gold. And ultimately, one of the key ideas with alchemy is this philosopher's stone, that you have this stone. It's almost like the Midas touch in a good way, in that you can take a substance, do something to it, heat it, bake it. It's like you take an egg, you break an egg, you cook the egg, and then you can eat it. There's this transformation that takes place. So I think probably a lot of the people listening to Welcome to Humanity are somewhat familiar with shadow work or wounds, or another way to think about it is traumas or mistakes. And let's say, this is a fun one, but so hopefully trigger warning, but it's fun, is the idea of that we've made mistakes. We've made a mistake. We failed. We screwed something up. Somebody misunderstood us. There's so many mistakes we've had. But if let's say I sit down for 10 minutes and I put a timer on and I say, okay, there's something in me that's not okay with having made mistakes. Sit with that for a minute. Next thing I know, oh my gosh, there's a part of me that thinks I am a mistake. And I can feel it in my body, and I can disassociate and I can go get distracted, or I can keep being present with my sensations, or I can apply a healing process or Uzazu, a mind-body modality. I can apply different containers and approaches to it. But fundamentally, there's this, me with noticing that there's this thorn stuck in my paw that is called I am a mistake. It's not going to go away by itself. So I look at it, I sit with it, I bake it, I pray, I follow the rabbit hole. I walk those stairways, the steps to heaven. Well, what'll tend to happen is something that needs to happen for me. And it'll look different for everybody. When I did that once, what arose after I sat with it, and this didn't take long, this was probably all of 20 minutes. But here's this thing that's been there for a long time, of running things behind the scenes like an evil Wizard of Oz. And all of a sudden, the words, I am a mistake, they don't change. But this awareness or this recognition, what came for me was, heck yeah, I am a mistake. I'm different. I'm different. And in that acceptance of I'm different, like what flashed before me were all these memories, times, and also just stories from society and mythologies. There's this flash of expressions of the goodness of being a mistake. the gift of being a mistake. And it was sort of like I was just getting rained upon the positive gift of I'm a mistake. So in doing that, I transform my nervous system from reacting to the words I'm a mistake and many other permutations of them, and also the experience of it. And I transform that to bring it on. I don't think it's just fearlessness. It's more than that. It's like, I had this turd and I put some lipstick. No, that's a horrible turd and lipstick. That's horrible. I had this lead and now it's gold. And back to gold. Now there's something that is valuable. And now I get to value myself. And now, hey, I want to share it. And so now we're back to this joke, this awareness of the wound gets to bring me into the world in a new way. And to me, that's the metaphor and the gift of alchemy.
Yeah, beautifully. Tremendous. Thank you for taking us through that. It's really, I am having a hard time with the turd and the lipstick. Can we do something to clear that? Because I'm still still like wiping my mouth here. Oh, God.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay. And I should also let you know that, this morning I was the king. I had the king role in a Mankind Project group that I'm involved in that I created. And so when you were talking about you got to do men's work and all the alchemy, and we delved deeply into heroes' journeys and shadows and wounds. So when you brought those up, it just hit home. I just spent really literally the last 2 hours with 7 men from around the world as we took on some very real aspects of what it means to be a man today and in our I group. And it sounds like you're familiar with that, with Mankind Project. So I wanted to put that out there, that you're catching me in a space of having been trafficking just recently, like moments ago into these issues.
I so appreciate that. And Dr. Fred, I'm curious, what's something about being the king that lights you up that's true for you?
Well, it's a rotating position. So, it was just who I was today. It just so happens. And what I got to be as a king today was someone who oversaw all the energies that were in the circle, in the sacred circle. We had 3 new men today, we've never had 3 men, and they randomly arrived. And actually all 3 of them were from Sweden they didn't even know that they were all going to show up on the same day. And all 3 of them were from Sweden. And, there was an opportunity to oversee and then to apply, to observe, to create and transform what was there so that it would be a powerful meeting rather than just sharing stories about the Super Bowl. Like that, we didn't do that. What we did is take everybody's issues, we used a general format, took what was here to be worked on and, followed a protocol within reason, but also opened up the possibility for these men to do their work and to leave that meeting transformed and optimized and improved when they arrived. And there's really nothing that lights me up more than being a facilitator, to sort of do that and then get out of my way and to be able to observe and witness, if not facilitate and contribute to men who are stepping up their game just right in front of my very eyes, who walk in, afraid and disempowered and leave the meeting with some degree of satisfaction, hope, future, really that is what happened today. And how much more rewarding can life get than to be a part of that?
That's huge. That's so beautiful.
All right. Well, we have a couple places that we could go searching here. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, I think it's come up a couple times. So let's talk a little bit about shadows and wounds. And, you mentioned right there in your bio that you've had, extraordinary challenges. And we've all had extraordinary challenges, but not every one of us has the kahungas to make that part of our bio. Like, my crashes is what created who I am now. My disappointments or my traumas and I'm not going to ask you to necessarily delineate those unless you find value in that, but really what does that mean? And where does your shadow or your wounds, what about that? Again, we've touched on alchemy here already, Alex, but I'm not really going there. I think I'm asking something a little more personal about what happens to the man who really took some massive hits, massive hits in multiple different arenas of your life, from your marriage to your finances to your body and others, and now has created what clearly is a beautiful, contributing, honestly, beyond respectable, gorgeous human being, in fact, in your own element, taking it to others, being a contribution. But you didn't know that when these traumas were actually happening or shortly after. And so tell us a little bit about that pathway. Can you do that?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I'm just noticing, I feel really touched with the question and the way you set that up. One thing that's coming to mind, the first thing that's coming to mind is I was about 17. I was in a car with a friend from high school. He was driving. We were out in the desert and it was pretty late at night. It was his car, and we were driving, and for some reason we got to the end of the road, and it was nothing. I think we were looking for a party or something, and it was just this nothingness, and it was very dark. Of course, there were no street lights, and we turned around, started going back to town. This is sort of in the Palmdale desert area of southern-ish California, and we started going faster, and we're like, yeah, let's go faster. How fast can we go? And I think we might have got up to 120, 110, and we start to slow down a little bit. But at that time, I think I suggested, hey, turn out the lights of the headlights. And it was this just gorgeous darkness, and we turned it. He turned it right back on. Everything felt fine, but then all of a sudden, he swerved to the right. I mean, the lights were on at this point. He was slowing down. We were like deciding, okay, that's enough. And he starts to swerve to the right, towards the passenger side, and it's just a 2-lane road. And then he pulled back real hard to the left, and we flipped the car, hit the top of the car, flipped again back to the tires. We both crawled out of the car, out of the windows, and I remember being so bewildered. Like, we traveled so far in that flip because an umbrella that was in the back seat was over 100 feet, back. So we traveled. He was freaking out, and we were both healthy and safe for the most part. And it was a while, and some cars came by and called ambulances, and we were taken in. I was in the passenger seat of the ambulance. My friend, he had some scratches. He was in the ambulance, and he was much more emotional. The ambulance guy said to me, I don't understand how you're not dead. You should have lost your head with that flip. The next day, when I went to look at the car in the lot, the passenger side of it was crushed down to chest level. I say I only survived because I was leaned back. I was leaned back in the seat. The seat was reclined. So, okay, that's sort of part one. Now, this next part is not for the weak of heart. So over these challenges, like with my body, I've been fit. I was a personal trainer and mobility expert for a while. And yet for myself, I couldn't achieve any goals. I couldn't achieve any fitness goals. The moment I set a fitness goal, something would break. I'd hurt my neck, not from overdoing it. It's just like something would go out. My digestion would stop. I couldn't eat to gain weight. With my finances, if I ever set a goal, that was the one thing I couldn't happen. And it was this struggle for many years. One, to find someone who could understand me. And two, for me to accept that pretty much everything I do is indirect. There's a magical quality to it. Now, I tried to solve that through limiting beliefs. Didn't work. I hired expensive coaches. That didn't help. I was called uncoachable. So basically every attempt to move forward didn't. And then the opposite, if I just surrendered, there was something beautiful about that. And then something would happen. Something would show up. It was almost like I was constantly getting shoved into surrender zone. But then only partly rewarded. It's like, but now I can't build my life on purpose. And it's this weird polarity. Well, in those breakdowns, I'd often, as I'm trying to build myself back up again and figure out what to do, I would have, and I say this in quotes, lots of suicidal thoughts. Except by this point, part of me knew they weren't suicidal thoughts. And if I talked to someone about it, they're like, are you really considering this? I said, no, I'm 90+% interpreting this as metaphor, mythology, metaphysics. I just don't know what it means. And there's one time where I slowed down and I paid attention to the images that were coming up as I was pushing myself through this healing process, or allowing myself to have a healing process. And the particular image was me slitting my throat. And I was talking to my sister about it. Again, she expressed concern. I said, no, I'm addressing this energetically as a healing experience. And I was just overtaken after I got off the call with her. I was overtaken with feeling like I'm in ritual space. So I ritually, energetically, in my imagination, grabbed a sword, slit my throat, said some things, I made it a ritual. Well, the images went away. The thing, I had responded to the call at a hero's journey level in a way. Well, that same day later, I was talking to a friend who's much wiser than I am in the ways of story, mythology, and ritual. And I said, I don't know, it feels like, Kali, who is looking to the men and the hero and saying like, hey, you're not cutting it. I'm going to cut your head off if you're not going to rise up, because you are equal to the task, And it's like, it sounds kind of like Kali. And he said, well, there's a Hindu goddess that, cut her own head off. And he told me her name. I looked her up. And before he even explained this goddess's story, I'm looking at the picture and I just wept and wept. And my body just squeezed stuff out, squeezed a lot of things out. And the images completely went away. And the way in which I was showing up to do the thing that I was having a hard time doing opened up completely. little God, I think of things as God whispers. Like the chiropractor said something to me. I'm like, oh my God, I totally needed to hear that. I see a quote in a random book. It's like, totally needed to get that. And it's this feeling of being not just guided, not just supported, but something. I don't have the words for it. Maybe you have a better word for it. But there's this sense of, a journey of 1,000 miles. What is it? A journey
starts with a single step.
Thank you. Starts with a single step. And it's like there's all these micro, metaphysical, yet practical, narrative, but embodied small steps. And it's this like scalpel at the intersection of the known and the unknown, just slowly helping thread the needle to be part of a much bigger tapestry that I'll never see the whole of. That's my sort of meta experience of some of my harder, like what's at the root, what happens through those challenges. And it's happened again and again and again, which led to a way I started to see purpose as process, as the not just seeing purpose as it, but seeing sort of what's the plot? What's the plot of all of my hero journeys, whether it's the masculine hero journey or the feminine hero journey? What is that fundamental plot? And that was another little tool that just showed up out of nowhere but gave my body tremendous relief and energy. But I still had to go be in the world and acknowledge that the map isn't the territory. And again, this both and of the narrative and the embodiment and this dance, this divine dance. And I'll end with one of my favorite poems from Hafiz of the divine invitation, where I'm not going to try to quote it, but the idea is like we have two choices. Like we're getting invited to God, and we can either kick and scream or we can dance.
That's great. For me, there's a lot ringing true. By the way, I've had an accident. I was in an extremely similar car accident where I also flipped from going right and veering back left, going 90 miles an hour on a highway, and flipped into the woods, and to the car was a pretzel, and I didn't see it till later that evening. It was like, wow. Anyways, I know how that goes too. Or maybe I don't know, but we both share an experience that sounds the same.
That's incredible.
There's something here about surrender, but there's also something here about, before you said what you appreciate appreciates. And what I thought you might say, but it wouldn't have fit, but I was prepared for it, was, what you resist persists, which is like related. It's like the corollary, the reverse corollary to what you appreciate appreciates. What I'm hearing is if you lay your cards on the table, if you actually look at what is this image of me, taking a sword to my own throat, for instance, do I have the balls? Do I have the courage? Do I have the surrender in me to put that on the table right there with my sister, or right there with my, with the universe? And that upon doing that, the deposit is made. Upon doing that, there's a clearing of the resistive images. And life then occurs in an alternative fashion instantly that was otherwise unpredictable. Yes? I mean, it was like, oh, wow, look, this thing isn't dogging me anymore. And not only is it not dogging me, it just got alchemized into being something that will carry me forward. And I mean, that's what I'm hearing. Again, please correct me if I misinterpreted any piece of that, but that's where as I dance with you rather than kick and scream, this is where I'm left, having heard this most recent part of your story.
Yeah. I love what you said there. It's not trying to make the images or the pain go away.
Exactly.
And it's not just like accepting it. It's sort of like becoming tolerant to it, which is easy to do. There's this third way. There's this third thing. In that 1 + 11 process is what I'm really interested in. When my client, he hired me to explore what could 10x, what could 100x. When I think about working with people, I think, how can I 10x, 100x their life? And I think one of these ways to like, here's one of the weirdest things I've seen. I've been in different communities where people see themselves as practitioners, visionaries, healers. They have an idea. They have a calling. And more often than not, I've found, and this is totally true for me, that the thing they feel most urgent to speak about, to teach about, is the thing that they most fear and resist. And I found that there's this strange thing. Like it took me a while to sort out what I was doing with people, because it's like, I don't have anything to teach in a certain way, but I've pulled my head out of other modality teachers' out of other systems, but more often than not, where it's like, I'm really excited about the system. It's the answer. And then hold on, I lost myself. What am I up to? And then how do I use this as a tool? I'll leave it there. And then when I noticed what I was doing for myself and for people was this leading edge just feels a little arrogant, but there's a leading edgeness to it where it's like the person's like, I'm called to do this thing. And they go, well, great. Can you even say that without some sort of inner collapse? It's like, oh, no, I can't. And there's this thing of like, it's almost like I need to teach what I want to know. It's sort of in that Ouroborosness of it. And so I say like, look, I don't teach anybody a system. I help someone see the system that they are. And when I'm working with someone, I'm just giving them themselves back, whether it's words or energies or experiences, or if I create something for them to experience, it's the framework is them, not the framework is what I think. Mm-hmm. Here's the term that came to me years ago. It's like, your message is medicine, but it's for you first. And so for me, it's like, the joke of your wound will move you into the world. Yeah, Alex, you need to live that for a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Being epic. Thanks for being epic. Yes, Alex, you need to live that for a while until you've received it enough that you can actually share it and not almost like share it in order to get it.
Yeah, that's great. I really think that communicates well. I have countless experiences as well, as a physician, as someone who supposedly people come to so that I can help them and give them, ideas on how to do this or that, and being, a psychiatric physician, there's like, there's ideas about how to manage distress or how to manage disempowerment or how to manage, illusions of being disrupted or outcast or whatever. And if I speak from out here, it's a complete, like if I speak from out here, like, yeah, why don't you try that? It's a completely different flavor than if I simply either be a listener for what's emerging over there or speak at least towards something that I have deep personal experience with. When I do that, then who I get to be when speaking to that is a whole different communicator than just Dr. Moss. And, it's why, actually, Alex, it's why this doctor is named Dr. Fred. It's actually closer to me than who Dr. Moss, who had, used to have a white coat and a stethoscope wrapped around his neck. Like, I don't have to be him. I can be Dr. Fred, which allows me to be much more, I think, at least encourages me or reminds me to be much more directly human with my human clients or partners. So totally relate to what you're saying. Mm-hmm. I want to address a thing here. It's a touch risky, and I think we can go here. I'm thinking we can go here. I think we've set the stage for this, which is, last I heard, we're all going to die. I mean, that's what I heard. I heard that none of us get out of this thing alive. And that's just an understood, that's maybe the only understood. It's certainly not, they say death and taxes, but I heard later on that Abraham Lincoln actually put taxes in there because people weren't paying their taxes. But anyways, we digress. So it's like the only inevitable aspect of what this existence is. And yet we are, just fundamentally terrified of this notion. Like, we're willing to kill ourselves in order to avoid death. It's like extraordinary what us humans will do to not even, I bring up death and I might as well said the F word. It's like, whoa, Fred, whoa, don't go there, my man. It's like, is it really risky to talk about death? And so one of the things in these troubled times, right? In these troubled times, it's even a harder issue to look square down the barrel at, maybe somehow. It's like, wow, isn't that remarkable that it's the only issue that all 7.8 billion of us and our dogs and cats and horses also share? And we're pretending that we can't really take a peek down the barrel of what death is, or maybe not so much what death is, but or maybe, yes, maybe, Alex, it is about what death is, because I'm wondering about this alchemy concept. Like, if we roll this out for real similar to what happened when we both rolled a car, or when we consider ending our lives, or when we have images that are, morose or terrifying, like, what happens when we put simple death on the table? Can that also be alchemized into something that moves us forward? And I say emphatically yes, but I'm so curious about what you might say to this concept.
Well, first of all, I'm incredibly inspired, and the way you're sharing about this, thanks for taking the risk, is so inviting and moves me into my heart. So just kudos, for how how you're able to facilitate such a touchy subject. And I love this idea, like, what do we all share? What does every life share? If we want to get practical with oneness, what do we all share? And we all share death. So that's just really powerful for me to hear. The two things I think might be helpful, interesting to anyone listening. One is, I think a lot of us know that many cultures have some sort of death practice, mystical traditions at least. They face death, they actively will meditate on death. There's various practices along those lines. One that I've been getting a lot of benefit from, very simply, is, there's gratitude practice. Oh, I have a gratitude practice at night, and that's wonderful. I've been doing goodbye and good night every night, and I close my eyes, I'm getting in bed. I mean, gratitude emerges, but where I start is goodbye and good night. And then whoever comes to my mind and whatever comes to my mind, I say goodbye to. For the last 3.5 years, I've been with my wife 100% full-time pet sitter. And I don't even know how many houses we've gone on, but we've got 45-star reviews on one of the platforms we use for it. Our time with pet sitting is coming to a close, but I started seeing how I was experiencing death or loss or goodbye every house we left, and then rebirth with every house we went to. So I just started really paying attention to that and practicing moving through the feelings of that. So I invite anybody to take on goodbye and good night, and it'll lead to gratitude. And it's a sweet, pain's not the right word, but there's a sweetness to it. The other thing that I just think is such a really interesting metaphor, and again, grounded in life and death, is, and I learned this from my mentor. So I had a very special mentor growing up. He was one of the 2 Americans that brought the ninja arts to the United States, but he was also a bit of a renegade and a pioneer. And so what he did was different, and he created his own flavor, super resourceful, taught me a lot about teaching and holding space to facilitate growth and learning. I started teaching when I was 15 under him, but he was also an outdoor survivalist. And there was this lesson. We went on a weekend trip, and one of our tasks was to skin and tan the hide of a squirrel. Somebody found a roadkill squirrel. The lesson is this, and I just think it's so important in terms of resourcefulness. I know I struggled feeling the concept of resourceful. I'm feeling resourceful today. Like, that didn't land for me for a very long time. It just didn't land. It wouldn't go into my body. Like, I don't know what you mean by being resourceful in that way. And at the same time, as a martial artist and in many creative ways, I'm extremely resourceful. I knew what it was. But this metaphor coming from skinning and tanning an animal. And the reason, just in case anyone doesn't know, the reason you want to tan a hide is because if we were in a survival situation, let's say take a deer, skin the deer, and we want that skin to keep ourselves warm or to use for different applications. But if we just did that, it would end up being very hard and unusable. So you have to tan it, and you have to tan it with something acidic, and there's chemicals for that. But if you're in nature, you don't get access to those chemicals. Amazon's not going to deliver. So what's the lesson? The lesson is every animal has enough brain to tan its own hide. And I mean, this started coming back to me just a couple years ago. Like, again, like what you resist persists. And it's like, hello, I got a gift for you. So I received it, chewed on it, started to apply it. Okay, where am I not feeling resourceful? Where do I think I can't do this? Alchemy am I struggling with? What won't change? That kind of thing. Right. I've got enough brain to tan my own hide. And this is this invitation, again, the both and of the softening and the surrendering that creates safety and allows for survival. Because if I don't soften that skin, I'm not going to make it through the winter. I'm not going to survive. So I have to soften to survive. But I need a bowstring to start a fire. I need something to trap a rabbit with, to eat, etc. So I need to be able to do something with it and be useful and provide. And so we've got that masculine hero's journey and the feminine hero's journey, feminine of the surrender, the masculine of the action and everything that's embedded in that. And so in this idea of I've got enough brain to tan my own hide, it's not just I have the answers within me, because the truth is some people who, they don't know what they know until they're asked. We don't know our strengths until we're challenged, that sort of thing. We don't know what we're capable of until the breakdown. And yet, if I have enough brain to tan my own hide, that reminds me, right, soften first, and then the next steps will start to reveal themselves. And I found that to be very helpful for me. Maybe not for everybody who loves to be, is a type D kind of person who fires first and aims second, maybe. But I found it very, very useful because the feminine hero's journey, softening, surrendering, letting go, and flow has been much more natural for me. It took a while for me to really recognize the value of it. Whereas the more masculine hero's journey of go slay the dragon, get the gift, bring it back to the community, that was very sexy and attractive and also very distant and tough to start. It was a very strange thing. Just say one more time, we all have enough brain to tan our own hides, and like wherever we need to soften around death, it can probably give us so much life.
Mm-hmm. Yes, well said. There's a lot of global absurdity. I don't know about you, but I look around and every so often I go into like a full body squint of disbelief. Like, what? Like that, like one of those. I'm like, like, oh, really? Wait, what? Like that. You know what I'm saying? Okay. And, there's one of those places is imagine if we either weren't afraid of death or at the very least could talk about death as inevitable. Like no kidding, soon. Like really, like actually soon. Sometime within the next 100 years, no matter how old you are, and more than likely within the next 50 years if you're talking to an adult, and it could be this afternoon, by golly. Really, you said tomorrow earlier today, and I'm thinking, oh, that's nice of you to give you the rest of today. You're really like you got that figured out. That's great. You had said tomorrow, and I was like, Alex, are you sure? Like, how did you work out guaranteeing today? It was anyway. So there's something here about the ultimate alchemy, maybe, is transforming all the weirdness and all the craziness and all the disbelief and disconnect we have about our ultimate transition, demise, death. That is, in fact, the definition of life. Is that you're right? You're not alive if you're not going to die. And it's like, well, that's really interesting. And, in Judaism, and I suspect it's in many different religions or belief systems, you don't say God's name directly, right? You don't. You might call him God, or you might call him Hashem, or you might call him, Adonai, or, something like this. Perhaps even Adonai is pushing it. But you don't say that thing, right? You don't say that thing. You don't say that thing. That thing's too sacred to speak. But that's a different kind of sacredness than the one that we don't talk about death. It's not like we hold death in the highest regard and therefore we don't talk about it. No. Don't talk about death because God forbid that might cause it or shine a light on we're so weird around death. That's what I'm saying. We as humans have, what would life look like if we weren't afraid, terrified, centrally concerned about death? By the way, as the king today, when I called in the directions, I learned that, the north, which is the direction of the king and the direction of the wise elder, the fear is, and the fear associated with that archetype is indeed the fear of death. So that's how that goes as well. Any thoughts about that, Alex? Yeah.
I think it's so fitting that the king's fear is death.
Exactly.
There's something that it's been like a meme in my mind for some time. I heard it some time ago. Nicholas Taleb with the Black Swan work. His work is so above my head, but I loved listening to it. It was just like a joy to listen to his work. And he had this idea, and I saw it again recently, this barbell theory of, I'm not sure if he was treating it as investments, but I saw it recently in terms of investments. So the barbell theory of investments, but the idea is this: you're trying to take the two extremes. So let's say you've got $100,000. We want to invest it. We want to maximize the pile that's in the safe stuff. And we want to maximize the stuff that's in the risky stuff. And I'm hearing that. Oh, and so we want to avoid the middle stuff. And that then maximizes the potential for some sort of return. So another angle of that, I was listening to a very, very famous athlete, not direct, it was in a course. And he talked about how his routine was all about getting comfortable. So it's, his food the night before, the food the morning day of the game, the socks, everything was about this routine to be comfortable. And something hit me. It's like, there's so much talk about being in our comfort zone. No. Like maximize, like get in your comfort zone, maximize comfort so that you can be maximally spontaneous and effective in the unknown. And just, I think there's so many iterations of this that I've been noticing lately. But the king and the death, it just feels like another one to me. On one hand, we look up to the authority. Oh, I think this is interesting. We look up to that authority in the king, and we need that energy outside us and inside us in a certain way. And then we're so afraid of the death. But imagine, if you knew that the person you were trusting was okay with death. I imagine that there's a certain leadership that just feel more followable and trustable. Oh, this person's, done some work around death. They're not leading us from their own fear of death. And so I might trust them more to not make life and death mistakes. So I'm just noticing this interesting barbell theory of sort of optimizing the stable and the risky, the stable and the unstable, in a way that is, it's life and death and chaos and destruction, or creation and destruction. It seems interesting. And this polarity for me has been very, very interesting, because with this being epic idea, one of the tools that I've been applying for myself has been, what's my greatest achievement? As far out to the good thing as I can get. And what's my greatest fear that I can possibly imagine right now? And then I use those as poles. And then I work on expanding my capacity to include both of them. Because if my greatest achievement ever was the way that I got married, there's a way in which I can feel gratitude, but there's also a way in which that being the limit, that becomes a limit. And then internally it's like, I'm not really going to exceed that, or can I, and do I deserve it? It's like this upper limit. And same thing with the fear side. So I think you're pointing to something really interesting with the king and the death, and the radical embracing of death, and how that can help us serve the whole as a king should and does.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, as predicted, I'm thinking that we could easily go another hour, 2 or 3, but we are, I think at a good space to begin to taper off here. And so I have speak a little bit to this being epic. I think that, am I saying that right? I think I am. And then how my listeners might be able to track you down, or work with you, or learn about you, or, just get in touch with you if they have questions or concerns or ideas, contributions, anything like that.
Okay, great. Well, I am available on social media at alexiglesia.com with a C, Iglesia. I'm available. I mean, that's basically the thing. I'm available for what people are up to. The Being Epic piece, I'm a modality junkie. I love synthesizing systems, and I have a hard time. I said this on a stage once. I said, it's like, I just hate it when people have such great gifts and then they open their mouths and the people who need them run away. And that can be a communication thing, but it can also be an energy thing and a self-belief thing. So it's like, whatever the healing tool is or the coaching tool is, for me, being epic is essentially recognizing it's not, I need to go live an epic life to be happy. It's the recognition, hey, you're not broken. Thanks for already being epic. Like, you're already made of stardust. You're already part of part of evolution. And so then I wanted a framework that I could find myself in. I could find my fit in the cosmos, find my fit in a community, allow myself to feel good being here, and really make use of the insight that I'm not broken. So that's what being epic is about. And to sort of honor the barbell theory, it's all roads lead home, and it's really the essence of looking into what's your greatest achievement, what's your greatest fear, and looking how those two essences are co-creating each other. So, like, go do it. It's free. And I guide people through it because it's an initiatory process, and life is very different after that, in a way that's different than using a system that reflects the system onto you, which is also very helpful. So I'm available for that, for teams, for couples, and I do a lot of embodiment work. Everything fundamentally is about, like, what's great about you that you haven't gotten yet. How are you not really broken, and how can you embody that? What does that look like? And what's the system, the contribution that you're here for? And let's draw that back out so you can receive your own message, which has a sort of a gentle acceleration effect in terms of growth and miracles. So that's me, Alex Iglesia. I'll be doing a lot of writing on Twitter in the coming weeks and months, and I'm making videos all the time. I'm making a video for each of the 64 hexagrams through the lens of Gene Keys and through the lens of Uzazu, so that we have very specific ways to embody those themes, so that we can wrap movement around those themes, so that we can get them faster and bring them into our lives faster. So I'm constantly doing those kind of projects, and love when someone feels called to receive my support.
Terrific. Well, you really are the embodiment of, having lived a full life and today being a good day to die. And in the meantime, contributing at that, cosmically high vibration frequency. And so it is a great opportunity and a gift to have had you on Welcome to Humanity. And what's interesting about this also is that when I hear the ethos of being epic, it's extraordinarily well aligned with the ethos of Welcome to Humanity. It's exactly this, very, very, very similar. And the alignment of, really get the whole piece of it, get all of it, because that's what's here to be gotten. And once we can start from what's so, that's when we get to create from, into spaces that are not limited by false ceilings that we otherwise set for ourselves. So I think that we share at least the intersections in a pathway we both find ourselves in now. So it's a true honor to meet you and a true honor to share you with our listeners. And it's really been a gift to have this conversation with you. It's moved me from where I started. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And I got your book, Creative 8, and excited to explore that and where we can play together.
Awesome. Super cool. Awesome, Alex. Thank you. And all right, so off we go, bigger and better, and beyond. And it's time to, what do you say at night? You say
goodbye and good night.
Goodbye and good night. So let's do that. It's Alex Iglesia. Goodbye and good night.
Goodbye and good night, Dr. Fred.
Hey, welcome to Humanity family. It's Ryan Levesque here, co-producer of the show. I truly hope you enjoyed Dr. Fred's in-depth conversation today. If you did, and if the conversations we share each week are making a difference for you, could you please take just a moment to leave a rating and a short review on Apple Podcasts? Your enthusiastic review helps new listeners discover the show. Your support here really does make a difference. I'd also like to invite you to reach out to a friend or two who would appreciate today's episode. Maybe shoot them a quick text or email, or maybe pick up the phone and invite them to subscribe to the Welcome to Humanity podcast so they can be enriched from the discovery of amazing ideas and insights each week. As always, you can find past episodes along with the complete show notes and links at welcometohumanity.net/podcast. If you'd like to explore how working one-on-one with Dr. Fred can help you break through whatever challenges you might be facing with your mental health or well-being, leading to new levels of freedom and vitality, I invite you to reach out to us directly by emailing Dr. Fred at welcometohumanity.net. That's DRFRED at welcometohumanity.net. Thanks so much for listening, and keep an ear out for another captivating conversation next week. Have a beautiful day, a beautiful week, and indeed, a beautiful life. Welcome to Humanity.